What's up, pet people? My name is LYVT and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we are going to be doing a 5 common crested gecko illnesses, what their symptoms are, what their causes are, and how to treat or prevent those illnesses. Now this is going to be a part 1 of 2 videos, and the next video will be posted either the week after or 2 weeks after this video is released. So if you're interested, or you have a crested gecko, or you just want to learn something about crested geckos, please keep watching. So getting right into today's video, as I said, we're going to be going over 5 common crested gecko illnesses or diseases. Now, when going over these, I'm going to give the name of the illness or disease, and then I'm also going to be giving the causes of them and ways to prevent each of them, and then also I'm going to be going over treatments and symptoms. So the first disease and illness that I'm going to go over is metabolic bone disease, or MBD. MBD is common in a lot of reptiles. You know, crested geckos, chameleons especially, bearded dragons, a lot of lizards and turtles specifically. You don't see it as much with snakes. But anyway, MBD, metabolic bone disease, is caused by the lack of calcium in reptiles and the lack of, vitamin D3. When this happens, the reptile's bones become very soft and easily malformed. So basically, things that you can look for with crested geckos is a soft jaw, meaning like you can touch them and it squishes, curved limbs, a curved spine, they have like a kinked tail, lethargy, loss of appetite. There's just a lot of things that are not common, obviously, for crested geckos that are signs of MBD, and definitely with the bones. Now, the thing about this is that it can be prevented very easily with crested geckos by using a powdered gecko diet. Almost all powdered gecko diets, especially Rapashi and Pangea, they have a calcium supplement in them to make sure that your crested gecko does not suffer from MBD. Other ways you can do this is to prevent it is to dust your crickets or live bugs in calcium powder. Calcium powder is super cheap off of Amazon, or any reptile supply store should have it. Petco, PetSmart, they have it. Anywhere that sells reptiles or has anything to do with reptiles should have a calcium powder that you can dust your bugs in. Ways to treat MBD is to increase your calcium supplement and have a UVB light to increase the vitamin D3 in their system. For the more severe cases, of course, if you haven't just noticed that your crested gecko is getting MBD, more severe cases, obviously, you take them to the vet. Now, the thing about MBD is that it cannot be reversed. So once your reptile has MBD, it cannot be reversed. It can only be managed and made not as bad. But overall, it can't be 100% fixed, especially if their spine kinks up very badly or their bones start deforming. All you can do at that point is like ease their pain and be there for them and take care of them the best you can. But if it gets to that point, you probably weren't taking care of them that great anyway. My personal opinion, MBD is a very easily prevented disease for crested geckos especially. So, moving on from MBD, we have FTS, which is floppy tail syndrome. Now, floppy tail syndrome also can be caused by a calcium deficiency, or MBD itself. It can be caused by MBD. But floppy tail syndrome is literally where they have a floppy tail, meaning if they are laying upside down on their glass facing downwards, their tail flops over onto them, or, kinky tail syndrome. Reasons for it are, as I said, MBD, calcium deficiency, vitamin deficiencies, and as juveniles hanging upside down a lot. Like if they're hanging to where their face is towards the ground on the glass a lot, that can be a reason for floppy tail syndrome, because crested geckos aren't supposed to be hanging upside down like that all of the time. Ways to prevent it, same as MBD, are to increase calcium, to have a good varied diet with either the powdered mixes, or you can have powdered mixes and bugs, adding more foliage, adding more branches, anything you can do to prevent them from wanting to hang on the side downwards a lot. A lot of ways you can do this is I have moss sticks, like this one. I have them glued all over his terrarium, and then also just branches, ledges, real plants, fake plants, whatever you can do to give your crested gecko more things to climb on and be active with. It'll help them not want to hang upside down as often. So that's just one thing you can do to work with that. Moving on from FTS, you can have this is common in the more dry areas of where you live. Basically, it is retained shed or problematic sheds. And this is something that, again, can be very, very easily prevented. And it's not really a disease as much as it is an illness, because retained sheds can cause limb loss or death, even if it's not taken care of or allowed to build up to a certain point. Anyway, if your gecko can't shed, it is more than likely because your humidity is too low. Crested geckos need a humidity between 70 and 85%. Don't let it drop below 55%. You can let it get down to 55% during the low points of the day. Obviously, you don't want it that 70 to 85% all the time, because then respiratory issues can take place and mold can be more likely to grow in your terrarium. But overall, you do need to make sure you have the 2 high points of the day, and then low point no lower than 55%. Again, this can be very easily prevented by misting the tank once to twice a day, and it can be treated by doing warm baths with your gecko. There is shedding aid, which I personally don't recommend, but I've read on a lot of websites that you can use shedding aid with crested geckos. Increasing humidity will help treat that. And if you do notice a retained shed, especially on the toes of crested geckos, it can cause loss of blood circulation to their toes, and they can die. Their toes, the skin cells in their toes can die, and then they could lose that toe, which makes climbing more difficult since they have the sticky pads on their toes. It's just, well, not sticky pads. We'll go through that in a different video. But it's just something that you definitely need to be very careful with, especially with crested geckos, is stuck sheds. They are, again, very easy to prevent, but something you need to look out for. So moving on to number 4, I don't know if I said the numbers for the others. Anyway, moving on to number 4 is impaction and constipation. Now, impaction and constipation obviously is caused by the impaction of something in the digestive system. And that mainly in crested geckos is caused by loose or grainy substrate, such as coconut husk. That's a big thing. So if you do have substrates like that, try to keep them covered. Crested geckos are on the ground a whole lot, but especially with juveniles, watch out for that. Anyway, some symptoms of that are them refusing to eat, sudden weight gain due to lack of releasing waste, hard or round, incredibly round stomach area, and of course the way you check for that is you touch the lower sides of the gecko and give it a little squeeze. Not like hard squeeze, but just make sure that there's nothing that feels stuck in that area. And then no pooping. The reason that I say to check their sides is because with bioactive vivariums especially, you don't always see how often your gecko uses the bathroom. You only assume it's regularly using the bathroom. So make sure to watch out, of course, for the other symptoms, like the refusing food especially. That's a huge warning sign for a lot of illnesses, but especially for impaction. So as I said, this is caused by swallowing a loose or grainy substrate that cannot pass through the digestive system of the crested gecko. They're specifically made to digest bugs or like rotting fruit or their fruit mixes, not dirt or sand or gravelly type things. So ways that you can prevent this, especially with juveniles, I recommend keeping juveniles or baby crested geckos on paper towels for their substrate. That way you can monitor if they're using the bathroom, and obviously they will not eat the paper towels, and if they get a little bit of paper towel in their mouth, it's easily digestible, but that's highly, highly unlikely. offer like the bugs and live food in dishes. That way they can't go onto the ground and they don't have to dig for them and get in the dirt and possibly bite and eat the dirt. Just make sure you have bug dishes. Again, on Amazon they have bug dishes. Josh's Frogs has bug dishes. Pretty much anywhere with reptiles will have a type of bug dish where you can offer live insects to your reptile and them not get out. Another thing you could do is make sure that there's no coarse bedding. Like I said, no sand. Obviously, repti bark I feel like would be too big for a crested gecko to eat, but no sand. Coco has Squatch Out for that. Just make sure that where you're offering the food is not on the substrate. And then a way to treat impaction and constipation is to give your little friend warm baths or lots of vegetables. And with crested geckos, you kind of have to like grind them up or mix them into water mix or something, because they're not going to readily eat like a cucumber or something. But you do definitely need to increase their fiber with vegetables to kind of urge them to go a little bit more, and the warm baths helps their digestive system as well. Another thing that could cause constipation is if the temperature is too low and they can't digest their food all the way, so that's why the warm baths help as well. Anyway, moving on from that, we are going to be going into number 5 now. And the reason, illness number 5 is eye infections. Now, eye infections are actually really common for crested geckos. Whenever I was getting Ryder, it's one thing I looked up, and Ryder actually had one not that long ago. Now, the thing with eye infections are they cannot really be prevented because there's no real 100% way to know what causes them. Of course, bacteria causes them, but if your crested gecko like bumps its eye on a branch or starts scratching its eye or gets hurt in some way from falling, or even just like they get a bacteria in their tank from something, a mold strand or something, they can get eye infections. Now, eye infections, the symptoms for those are obviously very swollen, cloudy and liquidy looking eyes. I do not have a picture of Ryder's eye whenever it got infected. It wasn't a super bad infection. It was just like a little cloudy on the top. It didn't really swell that much, but because I knew what it was, I was able to treat it quickly. Now, this goes on to the treatment. With crested gecko eye infections, obviously if it's severe and you fear for your animal, you want to go to the vet. But I, as I said, did not have to do this for Ryder. With crested gecko, I'm looking for it, hold on. With crested gecko eye infection specifically, you want to try and I use this. It's a Repti-Rinse reptile eye. Gotta do a beauty YouTuber thing here. Maybe, yeah. It's a reptile eye rinse, and this is an antibacterial eye rinse that I just like would hold him twice a day and squirt it over his eye and let it rinse out. But with that, it just cleans out the bad bacteria or whatever may cause it. And if it gets worse within 5 to 7 days, you obviously need to go to a vet. But as I said, with eye infections, they're not really preventable. Well, they're not preventable because we don't really know the exact reason behind them, but they are preventable in the terms of like you can check your crested gecko daily and make sure that doesn't get worse. So you can prevent it from getting worse, but as far as preventing it from happening in general, it just sometimes happens, especially with crested geckos and their environment. So those are the 5 things that I wanted to go over with you. As I said, it is MBD, metabolic bone disease, FTS, floppy tail syndrome, problematic shedding or retained sheds, constipation, indigestion, and eye infections. So, as I said before, these are just 5 of them. I'm going to do a part 2 of this video. I hope you guys learned something about the crested geckos and their illnesses. I hope you learned how to prevent them and treat them. I know this wasn't a super in-depth. It was kind of just a skimming the surface of each illness, but it is good if you're getting a crested gecko or if you have a crested gecko to know that these things exist and know some of the symptoms and signs. So as always, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you guys join me for the next crested gecko illness and diseases video, where we will go over another 5, because there are a lot. Honestly, with any reptile, there's a lot of things you have to watch out for. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope to see you guys next time. If you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, you already watched the video all the way through, please subscribe, and I can't wait to see you guys again next time. Bye!